One of the most significant monitoring methods has been this big animal welfare survey, and that's done across 20 different routes, and it's done over nearly 600 kilometres of street across the whole of Greater Bangkok. And that was first run in 2016 and got a really great picture of the density of stray dogs at that time, but also their welfare state. And what we saw was quite a lot of skinny dogs. We saw a lot of dogs with poor skin, and we saw nearly a quarter of the females were visibly lactating, so they had a litter of puppies at the time, and that's quite a high breeding rate. Fast forward to 220, and we rerun that survey with a different team, but trying to stay really, really close to that original survey protocol. And what we see is a really fabulous change in the dog population. So we've had an absolute crash in the percentage of lactating females. So it's gone from nearly a quarter to down to less than 1% of the females that they saw in 2020 were lactating. So obviously, there's been a lot of catch-neuter return going on, and that spay and neuter effort is targeting the right dogs. So the roaming dog population is just not showing the same breeding activity. And when we look at the density of dogs, we can see very clearly on those bits of the survey that covered where the CNVR area is working, we see a statistically significant reduction of around 20% in dog density. So in 2016, what we saw is that a large proportion of the dog population was in a poor body condition. So around 21% of the dogs that we saw in 2016 were either emaciated or thin. So they were in a poor body condition. Again, we fast forward to 2020, and what we see is that only 6% of the dog population shows an emaciated or thin body condition. So what we're seeing is that the dogs in 2020 are in a much better state of welfare. And what this means is that they may well be living a little longer as well. And so although we have that breeding capacity, that breeding activity has dropped significantly, the dogs that have been sterilised are probably living a little longer. And that's going to just keep that dog population size maintained for a little bit longer before natural attrition catches up and those sterilised dogs die at a slightly older age. And then I think we may start to see that dog population decline speed up a little bit as well. So this is why it's so important to carry on with that CNVR effort, because I think what we're getting to is the point where we're going to start to see that dog population fall much more steeply. One other reason why we might not have seen declines in dog density as much as one might expect is that we're not only dealing with a breeding stray dog population, there's also an owned dog population in Greater Bangkok, and they are a constant source of abandonment onto the streets. From the street surveys, we can see a measurable decline in dog density, but actually that's a mean decline as well. So when we ask residents in Bangkok, those people living in CNVR areas are saying that they see fewer dogs on the streets and that they're less troubled by them. So this change in the dog population is not only measurable, it's meaningful, it's perceivable to local people. Now, of course, this is also a project that is looking to have effective rabies control as well. So all of the dogs that are being spay neutered through the CNVR effort, it's all important to talk about the vaccination that happens at the same time. And so when we talk about this median of over 90% coverage, that's sterilised and vaccinated. And that's why we're also seeing some very significant reductions in the number of dog rabies cases in the Greater Bangkok area, and in particular in Bangkok City. It's the work that Soy Dog are doing to both sterilise and vaccinate the roaming dog population means that the herd immunity for the dogs in the Greater Bangkok area is really very high. They really have got great protection against the rabies virus, and so the virus is really just not able to transmit through that population, and we see very few rabies cases now, and that's a really big impact of the CNVR project contribution to the wider rabies control effort for Bangkok and the Greater Bangkok area. If the CNVR project stopped tomorrow, what would happen? If there was no CNVR, the numbers would return back to where they were and go back potentially to that state of steady growth over time. And it would probably do that relatively quickly, because this population of dogs does show a relatively high turnover. So we have new dogs coming in all the time.